Griffith 5 minutes for your questions, please.
Thank you very much. Let's continue with Puerto Rico for a minute, and I appreciate what you all are doing down there. But Dr. Cadlick, or Dr. or Red, Admiral Red, were any of the stockpiles that we've talked about today used in Puerto Rico?
Yes, sir. We deployed both our DMAT, or Disaster Medical Assistant Team caches, actually 13 of them, as well as field medical stations, which are these kind of like hospitals in a box kind of thing.
All right, so here's my question. Back to you, Ms. Abram. When we start talking about the vials and the delamination and whether or not there's a better product, you indicated that the new novel product does better under stress, but it was one product it was better than the other in chemical situations or more normal situations. It was pretty much the same. My question is, though, isn't the stockpile for emergency situations, and wouldn't the stress be greater if you're sending something in either before or immediately after a hurricane or other natural disaster? And so wouldn't we want to have the better product in those situations?
We want to make sure that we have high quality, safe and effective medical countermeasures in the event they need to be used. And there's a number of steps that go into making sure that the products that we have are what we're expecting them to do in terms of safety, efficacy, and being effective.
And my concern is just this. If they're just sitting on the shelf and we go in one day into the back storage room and say we need these, I get it. The current glass works. But if there's a risk of delamination, which we've seen in the past, and there's a product that takes care of that, for the stockpile, at least for the stockpile, wouldn't we be better off using the glass that's less likely to have glass fragments floating around in what we're trying to then use in an emergency situation? Because when people are trying to get something in there in a hurry, whether before or after the storm, they're not necessarily handling it with kid gloves. Wouldn't you agree? They're not handling it with kid gloves under those circumstances?
The handling is a matter that could be of importance to the product, depending upon if it's something that has to be temperature controlled. That's one of the issues that is at play with the Ebola response efforts right now. So depending upon the countermeasure, depending upon how it's going to be used, it could bring unique handling and care instructions.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I do want to ask about, and I've heard a lot, and I'm stepping a little bit outside my comfort zone. I've heard a lot about the antimicrobials and the antibiotics and the concerns there. I'm just wondering, is BARDA looking at some interesting and new novel approaches? I've recently toured a facility in my district, very small startup group, Teculon, and they have a platform technology for gene targeting. So I asked my team, find out what that is, and here's what I got back so I don't get it wrong. It is an antisense approach. It knocks down gene expressions, that kills the pathogen, basically disrupts gene functions, which means there's no way for the pathogen to adapt, because basically you're going in and knocking out part of their genes and they die. Are we looking at some of that kind of new novel approach?
Sir, I'd like to hear more about it, quite frankly. I haven't heard of that particular approach, but I'd be welcome to the idea that we would hear about it and understand how we could learn more and potentially see it in the future of our efforts.
But it's fair to say for both you and the Rear Admiral that there's a lot of interesting things going on out there, and it's hard to keep track of them. I'll make sure you get some of the info on this.
Sir, and again, compliments to this committee with the creation of the Medical Countermeasure Innovation Partnership, because that's one of the things we hope to do with this program called DRIVE, is to basically set up the opportunity for great ideas to come in. We've identified so far as of yesterday 8 accelerators around the country in your states, different states around the country, to basically be these receptive points for these great ideas so that we can make sure we kind of sweep them up and don't miss them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I would be remiss, and I appreciate the chairman bringing this up in his opening remarks, if I didn't mention the historic nature of today's date. Being the representative on this committee from Virginia, we have the National D-Day Memorial in Bedford because per capita they lost more boys on D-Day than any other part of the country. And I had the opportunity to meet the sister of one of the boys who was part of the D-Day Boys of Bedford, and knew Bob Slaughter, who pushed for the memorial and had the great thrill about 12 years ago before he passed away to introduce my daughter to him at in a local cafeteria. he was just there, as humble as he could be, but these were true heroes, and they really did save the possibility of a vibrant world with democratic principles in place, and it all came down to that one morning on this day 74 years ago. So I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair